arbitrary philosophers go, Wittgenstein is one of the most influential. In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to explain to you one of his simplest, but I think most surprising ideas. This idea concerns what it means for our beliefs to be reasonable. Great stuff. So think of all the different beliefs that you have. Beliefs about the past, beliefs about politics, beliefs about yourself. I take it that most of us would like to think that most of the beliefs we have are reasonable. By that I mean that if I asked you to, you probably think you could support them with reasons or evidence. But is this really the case? Are your beliefs really reasonable? Can you offer support for them? In order to understand this question and answer it properly, we need to know what support is. So think first about architectural support. Imagine you were building a house. You couldn't support a bunch of roof tiles on a single piece of paper, because the thing which is doing the supporting needs to be firmer than the supported thing. Something similar is true if we think about emotional support. An emotionally fragile person can only really be supported by somebody who's more emotionally strong. So it seems like support needs to be firm and strong, stable, consistent. Support is something which we have confidence in. So what does this mean for our understanding of epistemic support, that is, support for your beliefs? Well, Wittgenstein thought that it meant that support for a belief needs to be more certain than the belief itself. This is the first key point that we need to understand his argument. Okay, back to your beliefs. Is there anything that you have which is certain, which you can use to support them? Think about a belief which I take it most of us have. I am currently in the informatics forum. How would you support that belief if I asked you to? I guess most of us would say something like, well, I can see I'm in the informatics forum, right? I think that's right. So visual evidence is pretty certain. That's something that you can probably rely on in this situation. So let's call a belief like this one which is more certain than any other beliefs that you have, or at least as certain as any other beliefs you have. A maximally certain belief. This is the second key point we need for understanding Wittgenstein's argument. And we actually only need 2 points. We can formulate his argument now. I told you it was simple. So the first point was that support for a belief must be more certain than the belief itself. So like architectural support and emotional support require a firm, strong basis, so does epistemic support. The second point is that some of our beliefs are maximally certain. So your belief that you're in the informatics forum relies on your belief that you see that you're in the informatics forum. And that's something maximally certain. Nothing else is more certain than that belief. But now, and you may have noticed what's going to come next, if you put these 2 points together, something very surprising follows. And if you have noticed this, then you're thinking like Wittgenstein. This was his conclusion. Some of our beliefs cannot be supported. Why is this? Well, if support for a belief must be more certain than the belief itself, that comes from the first point, and if some of our beliefs have nothing more certain than them, that's from the second point, well then those beliefs don't have anything which can support them. So some of our beliefs cannot be supported. This conclusion could be devastating for the idea of reasonable belief. Think again about your belief that you're in the informatics forum. This belief is supported by the belief that you see that you're in the informatics forum. But if this belief is maximally certain, and so there's nothing which can support it, then neither belief is supported. The whole structure collapses. And as most of our beliefs are going to end up being dependent upon a maximally certain belief at some point down the chain, it looks like most of our beliefs are not going to have support. Now the idea that most of our beliefs are reasonable is looking questionable at best. Now Wittgenstein was not troubled by this conclusion. He thought that beliefs, maximally certain beliefs, are special. They play a certain special role, and that means that it's not a problem that they're unsupported. So to explain this idea, he compared them to the hinges of a door. Part of what it means for a door to function properly is to be properly connected to hinges. Of course, hinges themselves aren't properly connected to hinges, and so there's a sense in which they aren't properly functioning. But of course, there's another sense in which they're doing exactly what they should and they're functioning properly. That's a sense of allowing the doors to turn. And that's a sense of proper function that we're interested in when we talk about the hinges of doors. Analogously, there's a sense in which reasonable belief is about being appropriately related to maximally certain beliefs. Maximally certain beliefs themselves aren't appropriately related to other maximally certain beliefs. And so in this sense, okay, they're not reasonable. But there's another important sense in which they are. This sense is a sense in which they're maximally certain. They're the things we're most certain of. And so, of course, it makes sense to believe in them. To see this point, think about what you'd say if the person next to you turned around and said, do you know, I'm absolutely certain that I'm in the informatics forum, but I don't believe it. If anything's unreasonable, I take it that that is. So it's probably reasonable to believe our maximally certain beliefs then. So now the idea of reasonable belief is starting to look a bit safer. So if this was worrying you, you can be relieved by that. So my research wants to build on and develop this idea. I think that what it means for a belief to be maximally certain, and what it means for a belief to play that role, is going to depend on context, or your role at the time. So when my little brother phones me up and says, where are you? The belief that I can see that I'm in the office is maximally certain. Once I put the phone down and I go back to doing philosophy, then maybe that belief is no longer certain for me. So you see the idea here is that it just depends on context. Which context you're in will affect which beliefs are maximally certain. I think this idea sounds pretty simple, like the starting point for Wittgenstein's argument did. But I think that this is a really interesting point, and it has really interesting conclusions. So my thought is that if we can get a proper understanding of this idea and really understand what it means for beliefs to be reasonable, then we can put this to good use, solving disputes. For example, disputes between people with different political beliefs. And anyone who gets into arguments on Facebook as often as me will think that's quite useful. So I guess the idea here, this kind of sums up what I think is so exciting about philosophy. It shows us that by starting with really simple starting points, we can reach really surprising conclusions. And I think that's pretty cool. So that's my talk. If any of you have any questions, then as everyone else has said, we're all going to be outside afterwards. Please come and speak to us, or my email address is up there. Thank you.